Hi, everyone. This is the Product Uncensored show. And today we're starting slightly different because we had a request from the guest of the show, Al, so that he could actually leave a message for a product leader he used to work with who has unfortunately passed away. So the show will be dedicated to Gerald Singh, the former CPO of Grab, and then we will proceed with the normal start of the show. Thank you.
Um, Recently, Gerald Singh, the CPO of Grab, passed away. And I thought this was the best opportunity to remember him and to thank him for all he did for all of us, not just for me. I remember him very fondly. During my time at Grab, he always had great advice, and he was really a fantastic colleague, very empathic. And even after I left, he's been there every time I reach out to him for coffee, for any suggestion. So he's amazing. He was one of the kindest product people that I work with, and I will miss him. Goodbye, Gerald.
Can you smell it? It is the smell of the new year. Welcome to 2022 and welcome to the Product Uncensored show. I'm your host, Colin Pell, and you are listening to the first episode of 2022. To be honest, what I smell most of the time is actually food because, for Asians, right, every big occasion is marked by food, whether it is the New Year, the Lunar New Year, the festival of the Malay New Year. It's all food. So if you're living in Asia, it's always going to be about food. So yeah, what I smell is always food and I love it. So yeah, it's been a wild journey for the Product Uncensored show. And I took some time at the end of last year to dig into some stats about the show. So if you're interested to read a bit about it, the link will be in the description. Now, just a few housekeeping, introductions. If you're new to the show, you may find the following information helpful. We are on YouTube, so if you're listening on a podcast, we actually have videos on YouTube as well. And as usual, if you are there, can you please do me a favor and click on the subscribe button and also on the bell notification as well, because the bell notification helps this show to get discovered. So yeah, that's great for the algorithm. And also, if you are watching, I also have a podcast available. I know that start of 2022, a lot of people are going back to work already. So if you want to listen to this on the way to the travel to your workplace, we're available on all major podcasting platforms. It should be showing up right here. And the last one is that if you would like to support this show, again, it's purely voluntary, by the way. You can actually support the show for the price of a coffee. Links will be below. All right, that's all the boring stuff that I have. Today is episode 31, and I'm excited to introduce our guest, right? Now, he is the first Italian on the show, so I'm super excited. He's the first Italian who is based out of Singapore. He has been making waves in the product management scene of late. He's been invited to speak. He's done sessions by Amplitude, by Content Square. He's been featured on Product Beats show. So he's definitely, he's someone who's really there. And his journey has taken him from Italy to the UK to Thailand, all the way to Singapore. He is the Chief Product Officer of HappyFresh, a startup that raised $65 million in 2021. He is Alfonso Fiore. Welcome to the show, Alfonso.
Thanks so much, Colin. Thanks so much for having me. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Fantastic. Okay, so I believe you're saying that it's easier to refer to you as Al. So I think I'll just call you Al. And it's definitely easier for me as well.
In fact, fun fact, that's actually the full name of Al Capone. So Al is Alphonse Capone. So that's how Al comes about.
Very nice. TIL, you'll never stop learning. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's also quite cool because we are color coordinated today, as you can see. Al has his green t-shirt and his green background. I have my blue cap and blue background. So yeah, we are very coordinated. So we've got G and B. We just need somebody to be R to be RGB. So
yeah, correct. Yeah, that's a very nerdy joke.
I'm sorry
that we are on the same wavelength.
Yeah. So Al, why don't we start? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and also, how did you end up? Number one, how did you end up as a product manager? And number two, how did you end up in Southeast Asia? So let's start with the first one. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you'll eventually you'll cut me down a little bit, but I sometimes take the long windy road, right? Yeah.
Sure.
So I think in a sense, in many ways, my journey is super conventional, and in many ways it's super weird, right? So because very conventional, why? Because I have my first major is in computer science. Then I have a master in business, which I think it's if you look around, is like the prototype product manager, right? Experience in tech, experience in business, right? But then kind of a long-winded journey because I actually been a developer only 1 year of my career. And in fact, I'm a big believer, like I'm going to tell you a lot of quotes because I love them and because I use a lot of quotes in my day-to-day life. Everyone in my team is a little bit sick and tired of it, but that's a little bit how it works. And the quote of the day is actually the quote of the minute is life is what happened while you're making other plans, right? So I really, please don't ask me where I see myself in 5 years of that type of stuff because I have no clue, right? And
okay, so now I have to cancel that out from my list of questions.
Correct.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And so basically, like my journey again started as studying computer science, but then I always longing for travel, right? Somehow it was part of my life. It was something that really pushed me in discovering the into the unknown, if you want to another quote. And basically, for the first 19 years of my life, I never basically left Italy, right? So excluding like neighboring countries that I would drive to, I never flew. But then when I at the end of my university career, I did a European exchange program called Erasmus, where basically students can spend 1 year abroad. And I ended up in Finland. Why? Because I just wanted to learn to speak English. Because as you maybe know, in Italy, it's not like the way you learn English is not how to speak. Is more like how to read Shakespeare or something like that, right? And so we don't really learn conversational English. So I wanted to do that for my future. And I ended up in Finland because that's where the course was fully in English, right? Mm-hmm. Why not in England? That's a story for another day. And so, yeah, because otherwise this gets too long too quickly, right? I'm trying to cut down.
Sure.
And so there I actually got madly in love with telecommunication because Finland is the home country of Nokia. And so that's it. That's the first random thing, right? And so for a long time after that, my career was around telecommunication, right? Second, completely random thing that happened is that when I got back to Italy, I actually decided that I was tired of being a full-time student after that experience working at Nokia. And again, super random, right? Super nerdy fact. I actually, in the train from the airport to my place, I actually called a friend that I met. If I'm sure you might know. Do you know what's IRC?
Yes.
Internet Relay Chat, right?
Oh,
this is
wow.
like the great granddaddy of chat, right? That was there. I don't know. I think
we are now giving away the era and our ages already.
Correct.
So.
Exactly. I'm sorry to say, but
nah.
I'm that old. I'm that old that I used IRC. And so this was like a super genius, like a guy that 1 in a million, right? And this guy, we were teenagers, right? But this guy already had his own company and that kind of stuff, right? So one of my first, actually the second work experience, the first one was an internship in Nokia back in Finland. The second one was a couple of years with this dear friend, which was one of the foremost security experts at that age in Italy, right? Just insane stuff, right? And so I've learned so much in that company because everyone was like literally like definitely not me, please let's be clear, but those guys were bona fide hackers, right? Those guys were really, and again those are lots of stories for another day. And so I ended up like with those really super strong foundation on internet protocol, on IP, and then back to Nokia with a career in telecommunication. And so maybe a few years later, let's say more or less 10 years later, I ended up pretty much at the beginning of the app revolution with a strong career in telecommunication and no passion anymore, no interest anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And so what do you do when you have no idea what to do? You take an MBA, right? That's the normal that's the normal answer, right? So once you are like in a corner, what's the way out? It's getting a master in business. And so I was lucky enough to fall through the crack and be accepted at the London Business School. And that was like super life changing, right? The quality and the caliber of the people you meet in this international program, it's insane, right? There are really, really bright young kids, right? And so I had that experience, and I was very, very lucky. And my dream throughout all, and that's actually to go back to how I ended up in product management, right? My dream, because I was such a telephone nerd. I was so much in love with old Nokia phones. I could tell you the detail, all the specs of every single model of Nokia phones, and which one has this feature, which one has that feature. So in my wildest dream, my dream job would be to actually be a product manager for a Nokia phone, right? Even though I had no idea what that meant. And so, and in fact, I mean, that we can talk about it, but that's a very different path altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I thought, okay, what's the closest proxy to that was available at the time? And it was actually the Amazon Kindle, because Amazon is actually a close partner of London Business School, hiring a lot of people, right? And so I actually, that's another funny story. Like during your MBA, you get an internship, right? In the second year. And so I was lucky enough to get accepted by Amazon. And then the person from the recruitment called me and was like, "Oh, congratulations. You got selected for an internship at Amazon." And I was like, "Oh, awesome. With the Kindle tip?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. It must be with the Kindle team, right? And so basically I went back to all the people that I met when I went to see them in Luxembourg. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I didn't see them. They came to London, and I had the contact of the guy. And so long story short, I managed to turn my internship from whatever they wanted me to do to an internship in the Kindle team. And that's there it is. That's how I started my career in product management, by being a summer intern for the European product management team for Kindle.
Right. And what was it that really drew you to product management? Was it because you read about it somewhere, or was it because you saw like this model person that was in that role? What was it that drew you in?
I think if you are okay with a few jokes, right?
Sure.
I think it was like being paid to be really annoying, right? I think that was like to me that's pretty much the fact that you can be like nitty gritty and look into the detail. And I always love that, right? I think this is amazing because the devil is in the detail, right? And so being able to say like in precise detail how something has to turn out, I think it's so empowering to me, right? I really, really enjoy it. And I really love the fact that you can study it and think about edge cases. I don't know, I think it's like plus it really fits, like, because I also love human interaction, right? So compared to development, even though I've done it only for a couple of years, I thought development was also interesting, was also kind of a lot of detail, but it lacked that human aspect, right? So I thought that was like the product management would marry those different things, right? And but again, I'm a really big believer that, like I said, right, that nothing is planned, and it's super hard to chart your course, because,
sure.
For example, I'm sure that another thing that was very important in my decisions was that in Italy, I think to this day, there is no the engineering career, the development career as a proper way to make a strong, like amazing living, like it happens in the United States or in multiple other countries, doesn't exist, right? In Italy to this day, if you are a developer, I'm sorry to say, but I'm sure there are exceptions as in every rule, but quote unquote, you're kind of a second tier, right? Because you're just the guy looking at the code, right? Oh. So there is no concept of like you are super, super smart and you are like freaking gold, like you're worth your weight in gold, right? That doesn't happen in Italy. And so that must have also played a role, because I enjoyed development as well, but at some point I was like, nah, I wanna do something that matters, right? Which is crazy, of course. Today I would never say something like that, but back then, because of the social situation really around the development, I ended up by choosing another career.
Okay, very interesting. Thanks for just giving a bit of an illumination into the tech scene in Italy a little bit. Like I never knew that was the case. I always assumed that it would be like like all the big powerhouses of tech in Europe, where you would be able to make a very comfortable living as either a developer or any role within product development. Wow, very interesting. Yeah. Okay. So I have a couple of questions for you based on things that you've just mentioned. So first question is based on what you speak, I get the feeling that for you, your roles in product management, or actually all your roles that you've had so far, are you driven by passion or are you driven by purpose?
I would say probably I'm more a passion kind of guy because I really like I really love to wake up in the morning. It's again like quotes and quotes and quotes. I'm sorry for that, but it's a little bit like the Steve Jobs speech, right? If you wake up in the morning for too many days in a row, looking at the mirror and asking yourself why the hell are you doing this, then it's time to move, right? And again like a little bit of a funny experience, right? So at some point in my career in the telecom world, I mean it's also true in other kind of businesses, but in the telecom world, I think it's pretty common to be a contractor, right? And contractor means insane amount of money, right? You get paid like really like a ton, right? And I had this opportunity once in my career to have such a gig. And we were like a group of friends coming from Nokia that got hired by a telecom operator. And I was the first to leave. And I was like, but how can you leave a job like that pays such an insane amount of money? Just because I didn't have any passion for it. And I was the first to say like, hey, this is awesome. I save a lot of money, but I wanna love my work, which is, and you have to ask yourself, is that the right way to live? Because maybe it's not, right? There is a lot of, I have lots of smart friends, which really don't care. They go to work because they need to put food on the table, but then their life is elsewhere, right? They read a million books, they play musical instrument. So there are multiple approaches to life.
Sure.
But for me, I really love the work I do. And so passion is definitely my driver, I would say. Absolutely. And that's, by the way, why in my career, I've been always mostly in B2C companies, right? Because I love to play with my Nokia phones. I love to play with my app, right? So I need to have that dog fooding experience where I really, on a day-to-day basis, play with what I work, right?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I think the B2B space is a different animal. And I think for those of you who are watching or listening, and especially if you're newer in your career, I think that is actually a great distinction that Al just mentioned, right? You might want to understand which area you want to be involved in product management. Like even for me, when I was younger, I've had my first gig in product management. I was like, oh, anything in product management works. And to be honest, I'm still that way, but I've come to realize that after so many years, the B2B and the B2C animal for product management is very different, and it's different skill set, or rather different nuances. So that's a great point there, Al. And I totally forgot what I was going to say after that. But never mind. Let's continue. I actually totally forgot what was going to be the second question. So anyway, thank you for that. So you went into product management. You've never looked back. How did you end up in Southeast Asia?
Do you want a real story?
Because of course.
This is another crazy stuff, right?
Yes.
So the real story is that when I was in studying in London, right, for my MBAs, among some of the friends, got to know each other, and some couple were formed, right? And one of those couple, they were friends, and is actually Iranian Swiss, right? And she's from Thailand. And so when they got married in Thailand. And now, believe it or not, I know this sounds crazy, but this is the reality. I'm really not a believer in fate and that kind of stuff, right? I'm a very super practical guy, right? But then at some point I was like, you know what? I definitely want to go. I'd love to I'm very thrilled that you guys invited me, but I don't think I need to buy a ticket. I don't think I need to. I don't need to buy a flight. And so to cut a long story short, I started scouring for job interviews, and I got one. And so I kind of came for a few weeks of let's say, quote unquote, practice for the job, right? A long interview of a couple of weeks, like a stint at the startup. And as it happened, right, I told them like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not available, so that it would actually match the wedding, right? So I did the internship so that it would match that wedding. And then I just loved it, right? I loved the company. I loved what they were doing. And I love Southeast Asia because I still remember, right, in the first weekend, I was in Bangkok, and the first weekend, actually not the first weekend, there were only 2 weeks in, right? The second weekend was the wedding. And the first weekend, I actually went on a small island. I forgot the name, but it's near Pattaya. and it's a small island where you can go by minivan, right? You don't have to fly. And it was amazing. It blew my mind. It's like, this can be my life. I can work, and then in the weekend I can be on a freaking island enjoying. And I mean, who never told me before? How come there is this secret and nobody told me? And so I was like, nobody's gonna get me out of here ever, right? I mean, and ever since I've been in Southeast Asia. I think it's incredible. I think I love the culture. Like you said at the beginning, right? I love the food. I'm a big food lover, as you would see if you see my silhouette. And I just I think everything here is a riot. And I started, in fact, before being here, I never dived before. I never dove, and I don't know what's the past of diving, by the way. And I took it up when I was in Southeast Asia, and now I'm a big fan. I've been diving like hundreds of times in all the seas of Southeast Asia. So I think you guys are blessed to be born in such a beautiful part of the world. I think it's a fantastic part of the world.
Oh, very nice. And yeah, it turns out, your love for islands has taken you to the biggest island in Southeast Asia, which is Singapore, like big ass island, right in the middle.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Now I remember what I wanted to say before I lost my train of thought earlier. One of the things that I've noticed about, having, so many guests on the show, is that, with this question about passion and purpose, I think there is no one right way to do it. Like you say, there are many approaches to life. But what I do see as an observation is that for the people who become great leaders, especially in product, the passion aspect of it is so important. Like, I can hear it when you speak about, what you wanted to do, and you can remember what was it that drew you into product management. And it's always been the case. So I think as an anecdotal note, for viewers and listeners, I think there's nothing wrong with choosing, your purpose over your passion. But I think if you want to go far in product, I actually think that, having that passion is really going to drive you. Because I think, as I said, just talking to Al, it's so clear that there is that passion there. So yeah, that was the point I was gonna make that I forgot. All right, fantastic. I'm actually going to,
and I would say,
Go ahead.
No, sorry. I just want to say, and likewise for you, right? I still remember when I first heard you speak at Product Management Festival. I was in the audience a couple of years back before the pandemic, and I completely agree, right? That's why I'm super thrilled that we have this opportunity to talk, because I can see the same passion in you, and I agree, right? That's at least for me what makes me go every day in and out, even when it's a bit tough, even when you have to work, 12, 14 hours in a day. But I really love what we're doing, and I think we're blessed to have such a job, right? So I completely agree with that.
Yeah. That is one thing I tell my wife as well. The job is not easy, especially the more experience you become, the more responsibilities you take. But the one thing I wouldn't trade is that I love this job. Like, I always tell people, like, I would tell you straight up, I don't think I'm CEO material. I've never wanted to do that. But I can tell you that I want to do product for as long as I can, because that really makes me want to wake up in the morning. And I think it's really fun. Side note for those who are listening, I was just watching Gibson Biddle's talk for Product School last year. I missed his live talk, so I've been trying to catch up with some of these talks. And he gave a talk about your career in product leadership. And I think it is amazing, like his insight into how you become a product leader. And what's very interesting about that show. Sorry, Al, I know you're the guest, but I just wanted to bring this up.
No, please, by all means. Yeah, it's interesting.
He actually talked about how, one of the things that he advocates for is having your personal board of directors, people who are your mentors, people who are your peers. And one of the things he said was, like, one of the people that he trusted the most told him one day, because he asked the question, like, should I be a CEO? And that friend just told him, Gibson, I don't think you'll make a really good CEO. And I was like, wow, it's amazing to hear that, because I've seen so many people always say that, from product management, your next step is CEO. And, it gives me a lot of happiness to know that, that it doesn't necessarily need to be the case. Like, you could stay in product all you want. And yeah, I think that's going to be a fun thing to do for a long time if I could. So.
Yeah, totally agree. And I completely agree also in terms of the, like I'd say, personal board of trustee, maybe in terms of like, I also have people that I really trust with different experiences, including people that, by the way, have nothing to do with technology, with product, just people that are, I think they're really smart and they look at life in a different way than I do. And so I completely agree, right? Every time I have to take some big decision, I do my rounds and I speak about, the pros and cons. And sometimes you also just have to listen to yourself speak out loud, right? That's also true, right?
Yes, very true, very true. I want to move on. I know traditionally what I do is, I try to follow the chronology of your work experience, but I actually think that I would like to go straight into your current role at HappyFresh, because I really have like a lot of questions. And I would love to be able to deep dive into your time there. And then maybe, if we have time, we'll go back to some of your other experiences. But I think right now, the HappyFresh role is the one that really interests me. So for HappyFresh, right, you're the chief product officer. And prior to that, you were the head of products for AirAsia. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was this step up in terms of seniority, in terms of responsibility. How did you set yourself up to, when you sign the document to say, well, these days you don't really physically sign it, but to agree, I'm going to be the CPO of HappyFresh. How did you prepare yourself for that role?
Yeah, so this is a super interesting question, right? I think in preparing, first of all, I'm an avid reader, right? So for example, I'm terrible at remembering like the specific titles, right? But of course the Marty Kagan books, and in fact the second one was released pretty much at the same time, like maybe a few months before I actually signed the offer. And that actually is much more concentrated on product leadership, right? And then again, super like strange coincidences, right? But somehow I'm always thinking like, that's an interesting coincidence, right? There is one online training that I follow, right? That I subscribe, and they actually launched the first cohort of product leadership pretty much before I started at HappyFresh, right? So I tried to do whatever I could to be prepared, right? So online learning, reading, talking to, like I said, like mentors and colleagues, right? Try to understand exactly what was the difference. But to be honest, to be very, very honest, nothing prepared me for what I was about to experience, right? Because in reality, it's a totally different ball game, right? It's a very, very different game, and I think. I don't remember where I read this quote, but I think the best representation that I can share, and maybe you can tell me if you have the same experience in your career, is that it's a very, very different goal, because as you are a product manager, a hands-on product manager or a head of product, you're still very much focused on the product. But as a CPO, your product is the organization. You are actually trying to set up an organization that makes your product managers, your designers, your user researcher to be successful, right? So what are the structure, the frameworks that you need to put in place, the tools in order for them to be successful? And how can you course correct where things go wrong? And which structure do you put in place to keep an eye on such a large business with 30 people in your team, so that you can, with a limited amount of time, you can still help them, support them, and course correct when you see the thing go a little bit in a different direction, right? So, and the way I look at it is also in terms of career progression, right? I've been blessed always like with great opportunities, but the way I look at it is that your next step in your career should be something where you're comfortable with 50% of what is going to be the large scope, the job scope, and then the next 50% is something that you're going to learn along the way, right? Because then you're always challenged, you're always on a little bit on the edge of and learning, right? Because for me, the key word is always learning, right? I remember in one of my job interviews when I said like, oh, what do you want to do? I want to learn. And that the person on the other side was a bit taken aback. It was like, what do you mean I'm going to learn? I'm going to pay you. So your goal is to get stuff done. And I was like, no, we disagree. My goal is to learn, right? My goal is to grow as a person, grow as a human. And along the way, of course, the byproduct is, of course, is success for my products. But for me, the goal is because of that passion, right? And we talked about it before. My goal is really to learn. That's what I love. That's what I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And I really like the fact that you were saying that you took these courses and you're trying to prepare and read. I think because I guess I don't know. Even for me, when I first joined product management many years ago, I never knew how people got there. Like, what do you do? And it's refreshing to know that, yeah, it's always the case of you're learning as you go. So yeah, listeners and viewers, it's the same for all of us, I would say. I don't think anyone ever goes into a new role, especially when you're going upwards, that you're like 100% ready. I think half of it is like what Al says, right? You kind of have your core skills, what you're good at, and then the other half is, all right, this is an adventure, let's see where we go. So yeah.
And maybe if I can add to that, I want to also say another thing, right? Because I totally believe in being honest and showing a little bit what happened behind the scenes, right? So, as much as, and this is something that I wrote on LinkedIn a little bit ago, and it was actually by far the post that got the most traction in all my LinkedIn. It is the truth is that if you look at this at my career on LinkedIn, it sounds like, oh my God, this guy is amazing, right? This guy did this, and then he got promoted as a lead, then he got promoted as a head. What you don't see is all the company that says thanks but no thanks, and all the companies that said like, oh, you're not good enough. And one of the biggest fire that lit my passion was that back in London when I was doing my MBA, I was super in love with an app, right? With an app that I thought was amazing, that was like best user experience. I really loved it, right? And I happened to know the managing director, and I was like, "Hey, man, I would give a arm and a leg to actually come and be there." And the guy straight looked at me in my face and was like, "You're not a product manager," and that was it. That was the end of my career at that company, right?
Wow.
And it was to this day, because I talk about it to this day, it still hurts, right? It's still like what's the word in English? An unrelated love, like a love that didn't love me back.
Yeah.
Unrequited love, right?
Yeah.
So I desperately love that app, and I was using it every single day, and nothing would have made me happier than be a product manager in that app, right? And the guy was like, "Nope, you're not a product manager." And so, I guess why I'm trying to say this is because every one of us has been through a lot of these pit stops or showstoppers or whatever you want to call them, right? The reality is that nobody's life, and I think in this day and age, I'm not on social media, by the way, except LinkedIn. I think it's personally, right? Personal opinion, I think it's super dangerous, because just think about the little math, right? You have, let's say, everyone and their dog has, let's say, minimum 1,000 friends, probably tens of thousands, right? So statistically speaking, you have maybe hundreds of people every single day of the year who are on holidays, right? So every time you open this thing, everybody's on a beach in Bali. Everyone is like every single time, and you're like, am I the only person who's freaking work every single day, right? So this is just one of the many examples why it's a bit dangerous to be on those platforms, right? So other than LinkedIn, because it's a professional network, I try to be out of it, right? But the reality is that nobody's life it's as is painted, right? Everyone, there is a lot of brushes that gets covered up. There is a lot of stuff. So don't believe the hype. We all went through a lot of hard work, and it takes a lot of work and passion to get where you want to go, right? So I just wanted to add this because I don't want to make it look like I'm the golden boy or anything like that, right? I think very humble, lots of doors slammed in my face, and a lot of repetition and keeping your head down and working hard to get to somewhere that you want to get to.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to, when you said you wanted to work for this app and, the guy just slammed it on your face. I had a very similar experience. I'd always had this company in mind, in the back of my head. I was like, oh, this company is like, if I could ever work for them, as, heading up their product, would be fantastic. And I got the opportunity to interview for them. And I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And it seemed like it was this match made in heaven, right? And then I had an interview with the CEO and I got turned down. I'm like, what? No, how? Like, why? And And I actually reached out to the CEO again. It's like, hey, I reached out to the person in HR, and they didn't really give me a really good enough answer of, why I didn't make it. But I would really love to know specifically what was it that just, made it a no. And the feedback was really, really interesting, and it has really helped me to grow as a person. And like you said, I think, there's always going to be that one role or that one company that's always going to sting a little bit. Like even when I think about it now, it's still like, oh, it sucks. I could have, I should have, yeah.
Totally. If I tell you this 10 years on, it's because it still hurts, right? So if you're out there, now I'm a product manager.
yeah. So a pretty good one too, I would say. So yeah, let's move on to again HappyFresh. So correct me if I'm wrong. When you joined HappyFresh, was it the first time they were hiring a CPO, or were you taking over somebody's role?
Correct. Yeah, no. It was the first time that they were hiring a CPO. I think the company went through the same journey that many companies go through, right? Mm-hmm. As the company evolves, there is more and more of an understanding of the role of product, right? Yeah. So in that case, they realized that maybe, they want that particular role that maybe they didn't think about before. Yeah. So that was the first time.
And so then the question becomes like, so you're going in as the CPO, the first ever CPO of the organization. And obviously, the person who was previously the highest ranked, product person there is now reporting to you. How do you deal with that? Because now you're suddenly, you're the new head honcho there, you're taking over. So a lot of things will obviously change. You have your vision, things have run in a different way. How did you tackle that with the team that you inherited?
Yeah, so it was definitely the challenge is real, right? Definitely what you mentioned is correct, because there is still someone that has a particular vision. That's so the way I did it is just being very, very practical, right? Just trying to come in and see things that I think could be improved, right? And I think it very much has to do with frameworks, right? I think there is no one way to skin the cat, and so basically just taking that responsibility and understanding that now it's so new, right? So I think being transparent and having very, very clear conversation, right? In terms of where do you want to, what are you here to do? What are your in relationship, and how you want to make that relationship going forward, right? So because I'm a big believer in the fact that you are not being a head of product, being a CPO doesn't mean that you instruct people how to do their job, but again, how you create those framework, right? So obviously I cannot say how would that perceive from the other side, right? Mm-hmm. But because and among some of the tenets that I believe to be very, very true is that communication, right? It's so important. In fact, actually, one of the way that I've been thinking about this for a while, right? And if you ask me what is the shortest definition of a product manager, right? Because product managers are everything and anything, right? We are not designer, we're not developer, we're not this, we're not that. We talk to business, so when I try to summarize, when I try to come up with a very, very short definition of product managers, I always say product managers drive clarity, right? And another thing that I also truly believe is that communication is not measured at the speaker's mouth, but is measured at the listener ear, right? And so it's basically on you to go out of your way to try to communicate clearly, to set exactly, to try to explain what you mean as clear as possible, right? And so that's what I did, right? That's what I did back then. I tried to communicate very clearly. I tried to write what some of the key things, like for example, write a product strategy, so that because the written word, I think, is a lot more, is a little bit less likely to be misunderstood, even compared to presentations, even compared to the spoken word, right? Because when you write things down, you have really to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, right? So you cannot leave it half there, because once it's written, it's gonna stare back at you in the face, and you can clearly see that it's incomplete, right? And so I think I use those techniques, to try to be clear, try to be painfully, sometimes I'm pretty sure that some of the people in my team, they think I'm probably senile, right? Because I keep repeating the same sentences over and over again. But it's not a bug, it's a feature, right? It's really due to the belief that we all have 1,000 things going on in your mind, right? Now you're in front of me physically, but probably you're also thinking that you need to bring your cat to the vet, that your kids need to go and play, that whatever else, that your car needs to change the oil. There is a million other things that are going on through your head, right? So if I want to get something through to you, I better repeat it multiple times. I better crack a joke in the meanwhile. I better try to ask, like, okay, what did you get out of it, right? And so that painful attitude to be super clear, hopefully that helped, right, in that particular circumstances.
Okay. And so when you took over at HappyFresh, like I guess this would be, I think it's going to be a big question. Let me see what I can break it down. Let's try it this way. Like, I'm always curious to know, like, as the new head of product, in your case the CPO, you join in. What did you do in your first 3 months? Like, what changes did you make? Did you implement new strategies? Did you, follow some new framework? What do you do as the first, the CPO when you joined HappyFresh?
Yeah. So what's the first question that the doctor asks when you go to see the doctor?
Wow, that's a tough one. I don't know. How are you today, I guess?
Well, yeah, maybe how are you today? But then the second question is, what seems to be the problem, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing, right? So you kind of do the rounds with everyone, all the stakeholders, all the managing directors of the countries, all the CEOs, CMOs, COOs, etc. And you just try to sit there and listen, right? That's the kind of week number one, right? Because you don't want, or maybe week number 1 and 2, right? You don't want to come across and be like, I'm the doctor, right? Like Doctor Who, right? You don't want to come in and be like, hey, I'm the doctor, right? You gotta be trying to listen, right? First of all, you try to understand exactly what the problem is, right? And as luck would have it, some of the issues were things that where I thought, or at least I think, I bring a little bit of value, right? In terms of that driving clarity, right? And so basically, I actually, what I tried to do is basically put frameworks in mind, right? In place, right? That I think would help, right? So, and for example, right? First thing is, and as we talked about a few minutes ago, right? I think our role is really that of making sure that the organization, the product organization, can deliver that type of clarity, right? So, for example, templating for presentation, or and kind of like the summary of all my 10 years of product experience, right? I think, I don't know if you ever came across it, but basically there is a fantastic template that was publicized by Booking.com. It was made public in one of their presentations that they use internally, which is kind of a specific way with fill in the blank type of thing for every initiative, right? And it's like something that goes along the line of based on, and then you say, for example, based on user research, or based on competitive analysis, or based on this data insight, we believe that changing this for this user group will actually implement this change, will have this impact. We will know this by creating this change into this metric. And you do this for everything, like this kind of framework, right? That make that clarity, right? And more as I move along, right? I try to identify what are the blockers, what are the things that kind of, if you want to see, if you can follow the idea, right? Where the mechanism a little bit is not oiled well, right? Between all the parts of the business, right? Between the business stakeholders, the operation team, the marketing team, and the product team, right? And so you try to identify where you see that rust, right? And then you try to invent your own oil to put on that machinery so that it kind of gets oiled a little bit better, right? So you kind of, for example, some of the things that we did, right? It's now we have a Confluence page where we publish our quarterly roadmap. Now, the way we build the quarterly roadmap is in a, I don't want to say, this is very tricky, right? I don't want to say consultative, as in we all chip into the roadmap, because I'm a very, very big believer that roadmap by committee are the worst. But I have a whole theory in which, again, because structure drives behavior, and because you are there to drive clarity, you have to build, as a product manager, as a product team, you have to build all those techniques to extract information. So I'll try to give you a quick example, right? When we do road mapping, right, we list the initiative that we are thinking of, that stakeholders, product managers, designers, everyone else comes and suggests, right? And then we kind of each give our own prioritization to those items, right? And it's not because we simply average it out and then out, right? Then out of the door. Not at all. The goal is to say, hey, Colin, how come I say that this idea is P0, but you say it's P2? That means that we don't have the same set of information. So you have this model that allows us to tease out misunderstandings or misalignment when it comes to information. Right. And so these are the kind of thing that I try to bring to the organization, a focus on the outcome rather than the output. Right. So a new QBR deck that it's basically very, very much focused on the metric. Right. So what are the metrics that you try to move? Did it move or not? A strong accent of on A/B testing. If maybe someone has ever read anything that I published in the past, I'm sure A/B testing is something that comes up very strongly, right? Because I truly believe that A/B testing is the only way that product has to really prove to itself and to the whole organization the impact that we bring, right? So all those kind of frameworks that allow us to be more clear. And for example, there's kind of a scale, I guess, to it, because it goes from the more strategic one as writing a very, very clear product strategy as a full text, not just as a deck, so that it really tease out all the detail, all the way to the nitty-gritty. For example, asking product managers to write user stories using the Gherkin methodology, because it creates less opportunity for misunderstanding between the product manager and the developer, right? So there are all those frameworks that I put in place along all parts of the life cycle of product management, with the single intent of driving that clarity with the different stakeholders.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that it is very critical to document and provide clarity, not just in the form of, PowerPoint decks or, just presentations, but also in written form as well. Okay. So there is, now I can't remember which is the book I read. I'm sorry, but anyway, so this guy who wrote this book, I don't want to say the name because I'm I'm not sure who the author was, but one of the very interesting things that was said was, you are usually, as a product manager, it's not all about the writing, right? It's always coming to a shared understanding. So having that thought process and what you've just said, I'm just very curious to know whether your process is because of the world that we live in now, where it's remote and we're distributed, or whether you believe that, that's always been the best way of doing it in terms of just the specific tactics to achieve clarity.
So that's a super, super interesting question and very insightful. My personal belief is that the world in which we live in only made it a more acute need, right? I think that was always the case. Those tactics, I started writing in Gherkin and using this booking.com framework already 5 years ago, for example. So it's not none of those, not all of those are new, but I completely agree with you that this way of fully remote and 24 hours, 365 days a week remote made it more compelling and more impactful. But I personally believe that this is the right way to do product management in general, right? Because it's super obvious that, again, just for the fear of the obvious facts, right? Let's go with some of the stupid things, right? Everything you know it because it's in your head. But it kind of pains me to see how often I hear people saying things without realizing that they're leaving half of the thing true, because they kind of assume like a million things that are already in their head, right? So how do you make so all those frameworks enables you to kind of, it's almost like a flight checklist, right? Would you fly with me if I was a 20 years experienced pilot and I'd be like, let's just go, right? You'd be like, wait a second, aren't you supposed to like check all those things, right? And having that nice plastic board and you say done. That's kind of the same thing, right? So you know what you're doing, but having those frameworks allows you to get that mental clarity of check, right? Yeah.
Okay. Again, so I'm just going to keep going down this rabbit hole,
Yeah,
because
sure.
it's super interesting, right? So when you join, part of your remit would be to grow the team as well. And I believe that for HappyFresh, the markets that are being served is Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, but you are based out of Singapore, and I believe the product team is also distributed, right? So two questions. Like, number one, how do you scale? As in terms of does your recruitment process change? Tactics change? And number two, how do you make sure that the team, especially from a product perspective, how do you make sure that the team is always well aligned? Because as we said, even within a co-located space, it's so easy to just go off tangent, even more so with a remote distributed nature.
Yeah. So actually, those are, again, a lot of great questions and a lot of thoughts, right? So I think the first thing, again, as usual, quote, right? You probably heard this quote before, like, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed, right? And so I say the same thing about product management, right? I say, like, fantastic product management is probably already in HappyFresh, it's just not equally distributed, right? So maybe Colin is a fantastic stakeholder manager, and I don't know, John is a fantastic, clear writer of user stories, and then Mike is a great person that knows how to talk very well with designers, right? And so basically, what I try to do is exactly like you said, right? Because we kind of have more tendency to work in silo, right? So what I try to do is create more opportunities to kind of come together and align, right? So there are, like, we do presentations, kind of, we've done a couple. Actually, to be very frank with you, we could do a lot more, for sure. That's a given. In fact, actually, you made me realize that I promised myself to do certain things in the team, and I haven't done it yet, right? But like group reviews, right? When we review together upcoming user stories, because we want to share, because I'd like everybody to chip in and have ideas, right? So one of the things that I'm very, very proud of, that I think I'm super excited about the team, and I think I'm so proud of the team for doing it, is that we managed pretty quickly, or maybe this was already the ethos before, right? But very quickly as I joined, I saw teams embracing full transparency, right? So when we go through our mid-quarter QBR and our end-of-quarter QBR, I can see very honestly teams saying, we did this wrong, right? And what can we learn about this? Because one of the section of each team slides, right, is about what did you learn that you can share with the rest of the team, right? And I think the fact that they are really humble and really honest in trying to say, like, hey, we did this and we made a mistake and we learned, I think that goes a long way to create that alignment, right? Then, of course, there is kind of this common session. So, for example, we recently start something that we call UX Cinema, where basically the UX team, the UX research team, finds a key interviews with customers, and we all sit together as a team and we watch those interviews and then we comment, right? Because I'm a big believer that, everybody, not only product managers, right? Another thing that I tend to say is that, not only product manager are allowed to bring their brain to work, right? Everyone has a brain. And so product managers don't have any given God mandate to come up with great ideas, right? Everyone in the team has to, should and can collaborate, right? Developers, designers, data scientists, data analysts, product analysts. And I do a lot of work with those different teams to try to enable them to not only be more reactive to the needs of the product team, but also to bring their own kind of sets of ideas and their own research to the table, right? And so sitting all together and watching those user research, I actually have this unfiltered view of what the team the customer has to say, because you probably know even much better than I do, right? I think especially in Southeast Asia, there is such a care and this importance of being kind of polite, and so maybe sometimes not with any negative meaning, right? Just trying to do the right thing, but it's a bit difficult to say, like, in a, like, writing black on white on a slide that the customer thinks we suck, right? but I really need to see that. I really need to hear that. I want everyone in my team to hear that pain, to hear that customer pain, because only by that kicking into your pride and your willingness to do great by that customer, you can really get people to kind of
come together and be like, hey, let's do much better because we have the ability to impact these people, right? I mean, we bring food into homes. I mean, what's more crazy than that, right? I mean, food is life. We have such an incredible opportunity to change life for the better, right? We save them time, we save them money, we save them hassle, right? It's a fantastic thing, right? So let's be super proud of what we do, and let's make sure that we really care a lot about it. So those are the in terms of having situation in which we are together, right? AMA sessions, Ask Me Anything, session where we come together for UX Cinema. So these are some of the ways that I try to create that kind of sync, and of course bringing also the right management team, right? I recently had 3 new joiners coming to the team, plus someone a couple of months ago who's leading. She's an amazing colleague. She's leading the research and design team, and 3 new guys that I'm super excited about. So having like people that you can really like work with. So there is a lot of more brainstorming and just reaching out. And in fact, actually, to be honest, this is part of. I mean, of course, there is a ego stroking part in being here, because I'm very, of course, proud that you would think of talking to me. But the other hidden agenda here is to get great talent across Southeast Asia to say like, hey, some of this guy's not completely idiot, right? Like some of the things he says sounds kind of interesting, right? So let's maybe work in that organization. That would be like for all the designers, researchers, data scientists, developers, product managers, all the people that, of course, we really, really need, right? So how do you get to attract smart, like the best talent like we do have in HappyFresh, and we want more of it, right? Because only by having this really amazing talent that comes with passion, that's the only time where we can really achieve what we need to achieve, right? So that's kind of a little bit of all the things that I believe in.
Very well. I really like the UX cinema part. Like while you're talking about some ideas. So thank you for talking about how things work in HappyFresh. And one of the questions that comes up, not just from me but also from the people that I speak to as well, is in a I would still consider HappyFresh a startup / scale up. Kind of getting really big. And one of the hallmarks of startups is always that you want to be fast, right? There's always this fast. And especially if it's founder-led, there's always that you're still working as if it's day one. And it's not a bad thing at all. But, based on everything that you said and based on all the leaders that I've also spoken to in the past, one of the biggest challenges is also making that space, because you don't always want to hustle, drill, and you don't actually have time to think. Right, like you said, like the UX cinema. It's actually, to us, we love it. We think it's amazing spending time talking to the customer, but not everyone at the leadership level will understand this. So, how do you go about, or how did you go about at HappyFresh, making sure that space is there for the team to not just grind every day, but also to understand a bit more about like you said, the ethos of the company, the team. What is important? How do you make sure that happens?
Yeah, so let's just first say that I don't know what I don't know, right? So if tomorrow I call you up and saying like, "Hey, Colin, do you know if anyone is hiring?" then maybe it didn't go as well as I expected, right? So, but now jokes aside, right? I feel like I was extremely lucky because of the circumstances, right? First of all, right, I'm extremely lucky, and I couldn't, thank my lucky star enough for our CTO and co-founder, right? Fajar, I work with him every single day, and at least obviously I can only speak on my side of things. It's such an easy relationship, right? He's a super smart guy, super turned on, super switched on, really, really technical, but also very interested about products. So we can always brainstorm, and I couldn't ask for more, right? Because I feel like, if I can say so about myself, right? I feel like I can be a good partner with people that have kind of also like a little bit of a humble attitude. But if you're a dick, you just get the dick out of me, right? I mean, I can tell you, like, maybe offline, I can tell you a few experiences, right? about people that I just couldn't work with for the life of me. And I'm just like, just no,
Yeah.
just doesn't work, right? So that's the first thing, right? So having someone that already kind of is an advocate for those kind of ideas, I think really, really helps, right? Then, of course, the incredible luck of coming pretty much where we got this, really large investment, right? That of course gives you a lot of space, right? A lot of breathing space, right? Of course, as a startup, as you're always taking care of your run rate. So maybe in a different moment there would be a different situation, right? So for that is again luck, right? And then I'm super grateful for the leaders in my organization, right? Guillem, our CEO, Fredo, our CFO, our Johan, our chief of growth, and Christoph, our chief of operation. I think those guys, they really are, they really care to listen, right? And so just very practical, right? Because you asked me a very practical question: how do you get to do it, right? So creating that product strategy, sharing that product strategy, explaining to them that if I assign a single user story for sprint every time I do a quarterly planning, then I can and bring in data from other company, right? Quoting stats from Booking.com, from Microsoft and Google, that roughly only 1/3 of code that is being deployed actually positively impact KRs, right? A third is neutral, and a third is the deleterious to the KR, right? So it's a mix of data, of trying to show that I have some thoughts, right? That I have a certain structure, and then also maybe sharing like thought leader, right? There is a really great video from Marty Kagan that I share with my CEO, and he so graciously watched it, right? Even though it's crazy busy, with his own schedule. And I guess is probably, and I'll be honest, right? These, as you said at the very beginning, right? And as I'm very, very aware every single day, right? This is my first time as a CPO, right? So I think it's okay to kind of, complain to I don't know how to put it, but like hide behind the skirt of Marty Kagan, right? And saying like, it's not me, right? I'm not saying this kind of stuff, right? There is someone who's been recognized as a thought leader, as an expert in product management for 20 years, who actually share those thoughts, right? So I think it's a mix, right? It's a mix of clear structures, of changing a little bit what they thought was maybe working less well before. As having a clear communication channel, bringing framework. So I think is a big mix. But having said that, right, another quote that I always use with my team: the proof of the pudding is in the eating, right? So you could do whatever you say and do. Yeah, it goes a little bit, like it goes up to a certain point, but at the end of the day, is the impact you generate for the business, right? So that's what we strive for, and that's what I talk about every single day in the team, right? So, for example, again, frameworks that I put in place, right? Every single product review that we do on a sprintly basis, now we start with the KR. So the first thing that each product manager does is sharing the status of their KR up to that day, right? Because I want them, especially, and everyone else to be aware of what's the status, what's the situation, right? Creating a checkpoint in the middle of the quarter. Do we want to change how we're doing things, or are we still believing that what we thought 6 or 8 weeks ago, it's still true, right? So all those things that create that type of structure hopefully helps towards creating that credibility. And of course, if you really want to know what they think about me, then you have to ask them. That's the reality.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I have one more question about this. Your role, and because I know we're kind of running low on time. So one of the more interesting recent developments within the product space, or even in the startup space, right, is this idea of growth, of product-led growth, product-driven growth, and there's also now lots of teams who create this function called the growth function, and I noticed that HappyFresh has that function as well, and it's very interesting as well because growth is like a part of what product needs to do, right? You need to have retention, you need to have growth, you need to have engagement, and et cetera, et cetera. So the question for you, Al, is how is it best for product to work with a growth function if that exists within your organization?
Yeah. So that's a super interesting thing, right? Because it's the first time that I think of us having a growth function, right? So I think I forgot who said this. It might be it might be the author of Hacking Growth, right? Which of course now I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but I think I remember reading at some point, right, that I think it was him. Like I was listening to a podcast with him a while ago, and he said, like, initially this idea of growth, right, was because I was in the valley, and this was the buzzword, but we're just talking about a data-driven marketing. Let's say that's the way I think about it, right? So and in fact, actually, when I think of my colleagues like Johan, David, I think of them as very smart marketing with a very tech accent, right? But I don't think about it as growth, right? And definitely, I can tell you this about my philosophy, and I'd love to hear if you have a different perspective, because I'm always out to learn more, right? But I personally don't believe in a growth team in product, right? And I've seen it in other companies, obviously, without making names, and they came very fast and they disappear as fast, right? Because basically, it's first of all, right, it generates kind of wrong incentives, right? So, for example, and again, I can be detailed because I'm not quoting the company, right? I very much remember in one of the companies that I worked with in the past, right? That a friend was telling me that the growth function was saying like, oh, but we don't the code base is full of bugs. Yeah, but we don't measure bugs. Bugs is not in one of our KPIs, so it doesn't create any negative impact. And you were like, what the hell, right? And also, it's kind of like super kind of as a product manager, right? And maybe you can tell me if you agree with this statement, right? But as a product manager, the fact that imagine Colin is the PM for growth, right? And I'm really busting my tail trying to put my product into a good state, maybe paying tech debt and all that thing, with an eye on really getting in the place where I can take those low-hanging fruits, right? And then Colin comes and is like, oh, I changed the copy here, I changed this, that, and got 10% uplift, right? Don't you want to kill that guy? I mean, because it's like you don't think I knew that? You don't think that I knew that this was there? I just had two other priorities because I needed really to fix those things, right? And so the quality of code, the fact that I think it creates like bad incentives within the team, where it's almost like stealing, right, kind of thing. So I'd rather want every single team to realize that they have a KR to measure themselves against, and they have to try to create growth, right? This is the product growth. Now, the way what you mentioned is like more like marketing tech growth, and then you're absolutely right. We do have a team. In fact, actually, I believe that the official title of Johan is actually Chief of Growth, not Chief of Marketing. Even though in my mind, I think of that as marketing, right? And in that case, you're totally right? There is a ton of optimization there when it comes to, for example, App Store optimization, search optimization, social media, right? Marketing. So there is all those things. And so we work very closely with them to basically enable journeys that can be seamless, right? From the social media to all the way to the app, right? So we work super closely with them. And in fact, like we are actually thinking to create a more specific marketing tech team that actually work like 100% for them to create all the technology that they can use to be more effective, right? So I think it's very, very important. I also believe that, of course, is only one of the things, right? At the end of the day, you want to listen to the customer, create that really sticky experience, that retention, and then growth comes when you can really, when you have that engine, right? The engine is being kind of tested, and now you want to put as much fuel as possible because you want to get as many kilometer per hour or miles per hour from that engine, right? So that's kind of the way I think about it. On one end, product cares a lot about the user experience and creating that stickiness and that reward for the customer so that we really make their life better. And then growth is really that cherry on the cake where you really want to kind of put a lot of, petrol on the fire, right? To make that fire burn stronger, right? Absolutely.
I like that you made the distinction between the growth function within product versus the general growth machinery that is outside of product. And my question was actually more about the latter. And saying thank you for giving a lot of insight into that. And I think you make a good point, right, about the part where growth is a good thing to aim for, but at what consequence? And the reason why I ask is because, like you said, growth as a function and also as a function within product is also, it's quite popular in some companies and especially high growth companies. The word growth nowadays is just throw it everywhere. But I've always had this concern where, and I shared this with the former head of growth in my company as well when he joined, was like, I'm not against growth at all, but I always worry if the growth is thought of as the end game, like growth is the end game, because like you said, you would make a lot of different decisions if your only aim was growth versus like proper growth, like and that's why I wanted to get your thoughts, because like I said, I was going through looking at HappyFresh and there's a growth function there. So I totally feel what you're saying, and I would definitely say that if anyone you're working in an organization with a growth function, like what Al was saying, it's more towards the marketing side of things. I think there is a lot of synergy to be derived from working closer together. In fact, for us, we started experimenting with cross-functional teams where it's like almost like a matrix organization, even though we're small. But you have people from the marketing side, from our instructional design team, working together. Just like, okay, we need growth, but we need to make sure that they don't churn. And that's where I think you were saying that sometimes when your only KPI is growth, you don't think about churn, you don't think about tech debt, and you just go boom. And it's like, thank you. And then now we have 30% more churn in one quarter than we had in the last year. Then I think that's going to be quite the issue. Okay. Thank you. Hey, I really wish we could go more, but like I just talking to you, I have like all these questions. And again, I tell this to all the guests, right? One day or another, I'm going to get all you people back, for sessions 2, 3, and 4. But for now, I think I want to just have one last question for you before we go on to the last segment. You've been working in Southeast Asia for quite a while. You've had extensive experience within the region with the products that you're working in, right? I'm curious to know, as a person who didn't grow up here, but you've kind of, I don't know whether it's the right thing to say, but you've kind of made this your home. What is the biggest misconception about the product scene in Southeast Asia that you think people who are not from here have?
Okay, so I don't know. This is going to be I don't know if this is going to be a smart thing to say, but I think.
Don't worry, just uncensored show.
Exactly. This is definitely the high note of the uncensored show, right? Maybe that's the last uncensored show I'll ever do in my life. After this, they will review every script I write. I say before word by word, right? But I think for me, maybe because I come from, of course, from a little bit of an older side, right? And I'm not like a teenage or something like that. But I think for me, if I think about the way we look at the rest of the world, except North America, right? From the old world, right? From Europe, right? I think to me, what's insane and what's so amazing is how much ahead Southeast Asia is, right? So you think about the Gojeks, the Grabs, Air Asia, you think about the Traveloka. I mean, there is so many incredible successes, decacorns, company that grew from nothing. And if I honestly think about, I mean, forget Italy, right? In Italy, I think there is pretty much, to my knowledge, there is nothing like that. But in Europe as a whole, right, there is so little of that, right? And so, in fact, actually, because the CEO of HappyFresh is also from Europe, right? We were actually joking, like that. Actually, not that joking, because we currently one of our latest hire was actually working in Germany, right, before. And so we were like, you know what, because it's so hard to get talent, it's so hard to find the right talent now, because there is so much demand. You know where we should find talent? We should find talent in underdeveloped countries like Italy, like Spain, like Greece, right, where there is very little of this incredible tech wave, right? Where there is very little of this incredible energy that we have here in Southeast Asia, right? And go there and say like, hey, would you like to make a living and work from Bali or from Phuket or from an island in Malaysia, like I would say some people will say yes. So that's kind of like the what from very, very distance. It's probably hard to fathom if you're not in tech, and if you're from another part of the world, right? And same in like, and to be honest, I think it's also very similar in South America, right? If you think about Rappi, if you think about other like fintech company, there is insane smart people, talented people in parts of the world that were like maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago were kind of a little bit not as advanced. And now it's just insane, and it's so beautiful to see the smarts and the impact that this part of the world is creating in such an advanced part. Like, you have all those companies having businesses and teams in the United States. I think it's just insane. Like, if you would at least me, right? Maybe I wasn't the most well-versed guy in the world, but if you would ask me, like, what's the most advanced region for technology in the world, I don't think I would have said Southeast Asia, right? So I think that to me, it's amazing. It's beautiful, and it makes me so happy to be here, right? Because not only the culture, the people, the food, it's amazing, but also you get to experience this incredible growth, right? So I'm super grateful to have this opportunity to be here. So I'm very thank you for all the guys that and the people, all the men and women that work with me to give me this opportunity, because I'm super happy.
Okay, wow, I like it. That was really interesting, and I don't think I hear very often Italy being considered underdeveloped in terms of the tech scene. So again, all this is like really blowing my mind. So always great to hear and to learn. So thanks for that. All right, so I'm gonna go to the last segment of the show, which is always this quirky part, which is very interesting. Which is we talk about one song that you would like to share with the audience and the listeners as well. So yeah, why don't you talk us through why you chose this song and what is the song and who sang it?
Yeah. So this is the song that I selected is actually "Lose Yourself" from Eminem, and the reason why I choose it is because first of all, I have no idea if anybody ever saw it, but I really, really love the movie. Right, the movie that where he played himself. 8 Miles, where he played himself and his struggle, right? And I think because it's real, right? Because of the struggle to get where you want, right? Because again, I think it resonates a bit with what we said earlier, right? Because from the distance, from your Facebooks and Instagrams and TikToks of the world or whatever you are, everything looks shiny, everything looks perfect. But in reality, right? In reality, it's the 10 p.m. when you're still writing that document, and the Saturdays and Sundays when you still work to make sure that the team has what it needs, right? That's how you get it, right? And so that grind, that struggle, right? And I think that song represent that super well. But also, I love that energy, right? And in fact, I got this tip from a friend, which, by the way, is the same friend that got married in Thailand, and he had this tip that he actually heard this song before interviews because it gave him so much energy, right? And I copied it, and ever since, before a big interview, I actually listen to this song because it gives me so much energy, right? So that's why I chose.
Right. So this is your hype song. Is that like, okay, before you go into the ring, it's like, okay, this is the song. Okay.
Correct. Exactly.
Fantastic. So the link should be up here. And yeah, if you are some product person, you're going for a big interview, Al recommends listen to Eminem's "Lose Yourself." I think you are the second guest to recommend a rap song. I think the first one was Rajesh, who recommended Macklemore. But yeah, I think you are the second one. So yeah, it's cool. The reason why I really like this segment is I get to go peer outside of just the product's world and peer a little bit into the guests and what they listen to and how they do things outside of work. So that's why for me this is actually my favorite part of the show. It's like, oh yeah, okay. So yeah, thank you so much for this, Al. Yeah, we ran a little bit long, so but hey, it's the first episode of 2022. Cut me some slack. And of course, it was, really, really good conversation that I had with Al. I really love, being able to deep dive into, his role at HappyFresh. And my apologies, there were other questions and other topics I was hoping to cover, and but this was just too too good of an opportunity to let go. And so, yeah, Al, from my side, thank you so much for coming on the show. Before we go, is there anything, any final thoughts, or some word of advice or encouragement that you would like to leave with our listeners and viewers?
I'm just very, very grateful that to have this opportunity, Colin. So thank you for having me here. I think the last word of advice, something that I realize is super important, and I even didn't mention it. So you maybe can think of it or Google it or something like that. It's always start with the problem statement. Always start with thinking what you're here to solve in every meeting, in every document, in everything else. And that kind of brought me a long way, right? So I realized only now that we haven't had, like you said, we touched on so many interesting things. We didn't have the chance to talk about everything. So that's maybe one thought for the road, right? One for the road.
All right. And so that was Alfonso Fiore, the Chief Product Officer of HappyFresh, on the first episode of the Product Uncensored show for 2022. I hope you enjoyed the show. Again, if you have questions or anything, feel free to reach out, put it in the comments, hit me up on LinkedIn or whatever. Alfonso is also on LinkedIn, as he mentioned, so feel free to, follow him, read what he does as well. And I think for me, it's 2022. We are seeing that things are changing. COVID or otherwise. The world is always changing, and I think for us in the product scene, that's part of the excitement, right? Seeing how things change and how we can impact the world with all these changes as well. So keep being curious, like what Steve Jobs likes to say: stay young, stay foolish. And yeah, just keep trying things. And I'll see you at the next episode. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Bye bye.